has called him a lion of American history. I'm always honored to call him my guest. Please welcome Vice President Joe Biden. Well, Mr. Vice President, thank you so much. Thank you for being here.
Good to be here.
Joe Biden, everybody. Nice to see you again.
Not be a good time to leave. Thank you very much.
Well, listen, I'm just curious to start off here. Why aren't you off kite surfing someplace? Why aren't you on David Geffen's yacht?
I literally just spoke to the president 5 minutes ago, and he said...
Is he backstage?
Well, yeah, he's a surprise guest. He'll be out in a minute. No, he called. He said he was watching today, and he said, but it's getting a little too cold for golf, Joe, so I think kite surfing's out.
Well, you have been a busy man. You have expressed a few opinions about the president administration openly that the president has not yet. Donald Trump is the president of the United States, spoiler alert, and the last time you were here was in December after President Trump was president-elect and before he'd been inaugurated, and you said at the time, oh, we're going to give this guy an even shot. We're going to give him a clear shot to do the job. Have we given him enough of a shot at this point?
Look, there are certain things that when they occur, you just can't remain silent. And Charlottesville, for me, was a moment where I thought silence would be complicity. I mean, for real. And so I wrote an article for Atlantic and talking about we're in a battle for the soul of the country. And the idea that you would see in America, in a historic city, Nazis carrying flags, spouting the same exact bile about Jews that was spouted in Germany in the 30s. And then these guys crawling out from under rocks with torches, and to not have an outright flat condemnation of that is, what. Look, David Brooks talks about this invisible moral fabric that holds up society, and leaders' impact on how that is perceived. And I thought the silence was deafening. And then when the comparison was made to those who were protesting it, I found it reprehensible. So I couldn't remain silent anymore. It was just it goes to the soul of the country. And, but in terms of specific policies, I take some issue with them, but that's much less consequential to me than what's happening to the dialogue in the country. It's just dangerous.
What strikes me, what makes my eye twitch constantly, is the idea that we are lowering standards of behavior for a position that is essentially, at its heart, as FDR said, is a position of moral leadership.
It is. Look, it is a position of moral leadership, and what leaders say matter. They can either lead a country in the direction of inclusiveness and embracing other people and dignity, or this, Bannon and the alt-right. And I mean, when you're silent, you give these people room to come out of the dark. And I mean, literally, our children are listening. Our children are listening, and it's just wrong. And so, on certain things that go to the heart of who we are as Americans, I just can't remain silent. And it's not just the president. It's it's all that surrounds this. And Bannon and the alt-right, I find to be reprehensible. I mean, the inability to condemn hate is...
Do you think... Do you think that this has grown under the candidacy of President Trump and his presidency, or this was there and it was an invitation to come out of the shadows?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think there has been a gradual coursing of American politics, and it's been incremental. But I think what happened was that with the appeal, that direct appeal being made to sort of the fringe of society that is represented by Bannon and embracing Bannon, bring him into administration. It was like taking the blinders off and say, okay, man, anything's good now. Anything's good. And I just find it, look, I believe if the president today stood up and made a major speech condemning what is seeping into society, trying to reweave this moral fabric, beginning to treat people with dignity. I think he could change the environment. That's not who we are. I mean, it's not who we are as a people.
One of the things that many people said when President Trump was elected, that we have to hold on to certain standards and we cannot normalize the behavior that got President Trump elected. But on another level, whoever is the president is, you know, de facto presidential.
Yes.
What do you think has changed about the presidency with him being president? How will this influence future presidencies?
I think it will, God willing, it will go down as the single exception in American history. I really mean it. Look, I think that a lot of the folks in the audience, my guess is, when the president was elected and the people he gathered around him, the political people he gathered around him, came into play, you kind of thought it was, well, maybe it's amusing or a little bit, you know, embarrassing sometimes, but it didn't go to the heart of who we were. But I'll lay you 8-5, and I've been speaking to a large crowd of Republican audience out in Thousand Oaks, California, and asked the same question. I said, how many of you are now worried about the stability of the republic? How many of you are now worried about this new phony nationalism and it's us against them? How many are worried about this populism that is designed to essentially undermine the essence of the Bill of Rights, which is there's certain inalienable rights that nobody, no matter what the majority is, they cannot overrule? I mean, I just think there's an attack on the system. I think people are worried. And by the way, and it goes beyond President Trump. In my view, it's I just think it's a look. But for 74,500 votes or thereabouts, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Mm-hmm. We'd have a good president. We'd have a president who understands the role of the presidency. She would have been somebody who would, in fact, you know, weave that fabric.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree with you.
Stephen, the only point I'm making is we're talking about like this was a wave election, and somehow...
Only he is. Only he's talking like that. Nobody said I could win. Nobody said.
Well...
Biggest electoral victory of all time. Of all time, Joe. Of all time. I'm sorry your lady lost, but the biggest of all time.
Well...
Wanna play golf? I play golf with all kinds of people. Is that disturbing? Is it disturbing? Does he ever call you? Does he call you? Has he ever called you?
No, but I do speak to Vice President Pence.
Oh, that's nice. What do you guys talk about?
Well, we talk about, you know, he's asked my view on a number of issues. I spent a lot of time in dealing with foreign policy, and I had responsibility for certain chunks of the world. And he is, you know, I've let him know in a security setting what I thought they should look out for, what I thought the landmines were, what I.
So he's
thought,
like saying, like, I'm going to Spain. What do I need to know about
well,
my counterparts
no,
over there?
but well, not directly like that, but we've
I'm
talked.
going to a country where they speak Spanish.
No, he is a traditional sort of conservative Republican on foreign policy, and what I was worried about is that certain things at the front end of the administration would happen that would generate, or by their silence, would generate actions that would cause us some real problems. For example, there was an awful lot of talk about whether or not we were going to walk away, they were going to walk away from the sanctions against Russia and Ukraine. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't have any notion whether that was true, but what I did know that if, in fact, the president inadvertently said something along those lines, that would generate the far right in Ukraine that happens to be in the West to do things that were very counterproductive and would generate Russian response. And then the administration might be faced with a serious military concern. And so we talk about those things.
So what would you say? Would you say, like, make sure he doesn't do that?
No,
like,
no.
What do you say?
No, I'll be very serious. What I said is my national security staff was in contact with his. They're in constant contact with his staff and saying that this leader is worried about this issue. This is what we suggest you should be aware of when you talk to him. Mm-hmm. And for example, the first speech he made in Munich, which is there's a Munich conference. It's a famous conference held once a year where the administration sort of lays out their positions. He made a very good speech. Pence. And but he stepped up, and so it's. And by the way, you know, part of what this transition is, Jill and I called him and had his wife and he over for dinner, or actually for lunch, to let him see the facility they're going to move into, talk about Secret Service coverage. He told me, for example, his daughter was going off to law school, going to have Secret Service coverage. She never had that before. What it was like. So I had my granddaughter, who's at Columbia Law School, call her to tell her what it was like having Secret Service all the time. So it's just basic courtesy.
Oh, that's nice. It's nice to know that you guys can communicate and help each other like that. Well, we have to take a little bit of a break, but we're right back with more Vice President Joe Biden. Don't go away. Hey, everybody. We're back with Vice President Joe Biden. Now, sir, I'm going to ask you right now, you cannot be surprised about. Everybody is asking you this question. I think it's an important question. Vice President Joe Biden, are you willing to name your top 3 Elton John songs? Right now. Hold on.
Crocodile Rock.
Crocodile Rock.
Let me see. Candle Blown in the Wind.
Candle in the Wind.
Candle in the Wind.
Candle Blown in the Wind.
And,
Blown in it, that's fine.
and the Philadelphia story he did.
Philadelphia Freedom.
Philadelphia Freedom.
Philadelphia Freedom. Okay, great. There it is. Those are the top 3. I'll ask Elton. I'll compare it with his.
Well, what does that make any difference? I mean, what's he? I mean, he only wrote.
Well, I mean,
sang
listen.
them.
If he doesn't match up with yours, I'm going to go with yours. I'm going to say these are the top 3. Now, sir, you have a new book. It is called Promise Me, Dad. It goes on sale tomorrow, and it is about your son, Beau, and your relationship with him, what he meant to your family, what he meant to our country. And what does the title mean? What was the promise you made him?
The promise I made him, Beau was, the reason I wrote the book, I wanted you all to know what an incredible, I sound like a father, which I am, an incredible man my son was. And secondly, I wanted to give people hope that there is, through purpose, you can find your way through grief. And that's the purpose of the book. And so when he said, we were having a conversation, and Beau was very emphatic. He didn't want anybody to know how desperate his circumstance was. And so he'd say, Dad, look, when they mention me, smile, Dad, smile. Tell them everything's okay. And then he'd say to me after dinner one night at his home, he said, "Dad, I got to talk to you." And we sat with his wife at the table. He said, "Dad, I know no one loves me more than you." And he said, "But Dad, I'm going to be all right no matter what happens. But you got to promise me, Dad. Promise me you're going to be okay." What he meant by that was, he knows that my whole life that I satisfied me, like him, has been devoted to trying to deal with the things I think we can make the country and the world better. And he was worried that what I was going to do out of grief is I was going to turn inward. I'd take care of the family, but that I would step back from all the things that I've devoted my life to. And so that was the promise. Promise me, Dad, you're going to stay engaged. It wasn't promise me, Dad, you're going to run for president, which a lot of people are trying. No, really mean it, because he did want me to run for president, but that wasn't the promise. Barack asked me, the president asked me at lunch one day when Bo was sick, he said, "What do you want to do with the rest of your life?" And I said, "I want to do what I've done," the same answer I would have given you when I was 29, when I was 39, and my age right now. I want to make a difference, and I think I can. And so Bo, you talked about this, Steve, and you understand this better than most anybody. He wanted me to stay engaged. It wasn't about running for president. It was about staying engaged. So I had a great opportunity when I got out of office. All the people, had I run before he got sick and had I won, the very people I'd have running the State Department, the Defense Department, the National Security Apparatus are now with me at the University of Pennsylvania. The University of Pennsylvania is giving me a significant amount of money to hire staff. The University of Delaware has done the same thing, over a couple $1 million. I have first-rate staff people, and I've continued to a group of Nobel laureates, along with guys, the heads of major hospitals like at Sloan and other places, Sloan Kettering, came to me and said, "Would you keep the Biden Cancer Initiative going, because there's not as much happening now?" And so it's all about purpose. And I find it, for me and for Jill and for Hunter and my daughter Ashley, look, when you and I had one of the most, and it presumptuous of me to say this, but I feel like I know you because the last show we had, I think it went in a direction neither of us expected it to go. Mm-hmm. And when I got home, Hunter said, "Dad, it was you were good, you and Mr. Colbert were great." He said, "But look, here's the deal, Dad. Let's focus on not Bo's loss. Let's focus on Bo's promise. What it is Bo would be doing were he here now." And for me, that's the promise. And I want Bo to be proud of me. I want him to be proud that I'm doing what I've always done and I promised him I would try to do.
Well, you said that you want the book to be an opportunity for people to see some hope through their grief. And, you know, grief turns the shock, the tragedy, it can turn into wisdom. You know, what you can learn from your grief and what you can experience as a fellow human being. Everybody experiences grief. But what we need is people around us who love us to help us through our grief.
That's exactly right.
But sadly, when you lose someone you love so much as you do your son, no one could have helped you more than him.
But, you know, I think that's absolutely true. But I'll bet every one of you, look, think of all the people today that got up this morning, didn't have any help at all, lost somebody they desperately, desperately, desperately miss. And they get up every day and they put one foot in front of the other and they go on and they move. They keep going. And I think what they do, at least what I think works, is they internalize. Bo's still with me. Bo, I hear his voice. You know, it's a constant reassurance and it's a constant push. And you know, and
do you talk back to him?
Well, I do actually. I'm not. I know it sounds silly, but you know, it's a little bit like when you were a kid. You know, you want to make sure are you living up to your expectations of your mom or your dad. For me, I started looking up to my boys when they were in their teens. It's a strange thing, but after they lost their mom and dad, their mom and their sister, I was the only one around, and they became sort of the ballast for me. And they kind of helped raise me. And so it's always been one of these things where I don't know when I started looking up to them. It's probably when they were 14 or 15. I'd find out, you know, there was a couple in the neighborhood who got killed, left 2 little boys. I found my boys were going over and talking to them and telling them what it's going to be like. I found my boys doing so many things that were just so kind of way above their years. And so, Bo, I asked myself, just like you probably ask yourself, what would your mother want you to do? Not a joke. I mean, you ask yourself those questions. So for me, it's like, what would Bo want me doing now? What would Bo be doing if he were here? And that's the piece of, I know he's still with me. I know he's still in me. And I look at his son, and I see my Bo. I look at his brother, I see Bo. I look at his sister, I see Bo. So I'm lucky that I have so much that's alive and healthy and vibrant that reminds me of him. And it gives you purpose. And I find that the only way I was able to get through it last time was to have a sense of purpose and to do something that I think that then Nelia and my daughter would be proud of me, and now that Bo would be proud of me.
When the purpose that you felt, to raise your 2 boys, Hunter and Bo, after your wife Nelia and your daughter Naomi died, is a natural one for a father to love their boys, to be strong, to give them the love they need. When, if you don't mind me asking, if this isn't too personal, when Bo died, did you have to revisit your grief over your wife and your daughter because part of that purpose now was gone, and in some ways they left again because Bo was gone?
No, because I looked at my 2 grandchildren. You know, I looked at my little Hunter and say, Pop, tell me more stories about Daddy. Or Pop, you know, he loved to lie down in the summer when we would be at the pool in Lima. She said, you smell like Daddy, Pop. Or, you know, my granddaughter talking about, Pop, you're not going away, are you, Pop? And, you know, and that's why my son Hunter stepped in to try to help raise them, my daughter. Look, I've been really, really lucky. I've got a family that is is just woven together in a way that we have an expression in our family. My sister's here today with me. I attribute it to her. If you have to ask, it's too late. If you have to ask for help, it's too late. You just know. And so there's so much out there that's still, for example, we're going to Thanksgiving, and I get all 5 of my grandchildren. I get them. With Jill.
Nice deal.
No, I really mean it.
Deal.
No, I'm serious.
Well,
it's amazing.
We have to go here in just a moment, but talking to you is always enjoyable because you are willing to share in your humanity, warts and all, because grief is something that nobody wants to face. No one wants to invite it, but eventually it comes for everyone. And it's the one shared thing, no matter what your beliefs are, what your religion is, what your political positions are, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, it doesn't matter. And I think one of the reasons why people, you know, 2 years ago when we had you on the show, would have been very happy if you ran for president, is they want someone who shares their humanity and can unite people about common values. Now, I'm not going to ask you if you're going to run for president because I know you're not going to give me an answer. But, and are you going to run for president? You're not going to give me an answer.
No, I honest to God don't. Look, anybody who's been through this, how many of you lost someone close to you? Raise your hand. Were you ready to make a decision about a fundamental change in your life immediately after that or shortly after? It's been 2 years. I'm just not, I want to focus on Bo and my grandkids, and you know, we'll see where it goes. But well,
the country's never been more divided. We need a unifier. Who do you like in the Democratic field or the Republican field? Who do you think in 2020 could go, that person has a hope of uniting people?
Well, I think you're seeing it reemerge. I think there are a number of people in the Democratic Party. I'm not going to start naming, I'm going to leave somebody out. But we have some really talented relatively new people. And just remember, no one knew who Bill Clinton was till about 15 months before he ran, before the general election. No one knew who Barack, they knew the speech, but they didn't have any idea of his presidential aspirations till about a year and a half out. So this is really early in the game. This is really early in the game. And you're already seeing what's happened now in my party is you've seen the surge of a lot of younger women, particularly, and men who are getting engaged and said, enough, had enough. This last election, I think, was a wave election, all the way from Washington State to Maine, to the Upper Peninsula, to Florida, all sending the same message that we've had enough of this god-awful division. And I think it's gotten bad enough that people are now getting engaged again. Kind of like my generation. When I was in high school and early days of college, the war in Vietnam, it was like, well, drop out, go to Haight-Ashbury, don't trust anybody over 30. But it got to the point in the late 70s when it was like, hey man, this is enough, we got to change this. And our generation changed it. I walked across that stage in '68 after Bobby Kennedy, my only hero, was killed that same day, and said, I can be part of fundamentally changing the country. That's happening now. You're going to see so many new candidates out there.
Mr. Vice President, thank you so much for being here. Promise Me Dad is on sale tomorrow. Joe Biden, everybody. We'll be right back with Elton John.